And let's take a look at this play where this man completely sabotaged this fourth down. This is embarrassing. Come on now. Take a look.
Shotgun Sanders.
Look at him at the bottom of the screen. Bottom of the screen. Hold on. Come on, dog. Come on, dog. You serious?
Sanders.
If you thought NFL chaos stopped at bad play calling and blown coverages, think again, because what just surfaced on tape is fans asking a dangerous question. Was this really football or something darker? This is Spill News, where secrets don't leak, they explode. The internet couldn't believe it, and you won't either. A single fourth down play, one camera angle, one offensive lineman, and suddenly, Jimmy Haslam is being dragged into a firestorm that nobody saw coming. Because when Cam Robinson showed up on that snap, something felt off. Too clean, too still, too intentional. And at the center of it all, Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback already fighting pressure, narratives, and whispers that he doesn't belong. But what happens when the betrayal doesn't come from the defense, but from the guy paid to protect you? Clips started circulating. Analysts paused the tape. Fans slowed it down frame by frame. And the comments exploded. Bro said too much and they got him. That didn't look like a mistake. Am I tripping, or did he just let that happen? So let me ask you this. If you were in that pocket, same moment, same stakes, same betrayal, what would you do? Because once you see what we're about to break down, trust me, it gets uglier. It didn't start with outrage. It started with confusion. A pause, a rewind, a slow motion clip that didn't sit right with people who know football. Because on paper, it was just another fourth and short, another broken play, another quarterback taking heat. But on screen, something felt wrong.
Yeah, I can't fault him a lot. I thought he did a really good job of maneuvering. I thought his opening drive was great. I thought he did a good job of moving the ball. I thought his best drive was his best drive moving down the field. I don't think that the interception for Quinshon Judkins was on him. Now, people will say that ball was a little bit behind him.
I don't want to that interception of Quinshon Judkins.
Too wrong to ignore. Cam Robinson lined up where he was supposed to be. The defender wasn't disguised. The pressure wasn't exotic. And yet, when the ball snapped, Robinson didn't fight. He didn't anchor. He didn't even flinch the way linemen are trained to flinch. He stood there, got nudged, and moved aside like the outcome had already been agreed on. That single moment cracked something open. Shedeur Sanders didn't react at first. Quarterbacks rarely do. They're taught to internalize chaos, not point fingers. But the internet doesn't have that discipline. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. Analysts froze the frame. Fans zoomed in. Former players chimed in with that tone that says more than words ever could. Hold on, one voice said. Run that back. And when it ran back again, the silence got louder. Because people weren't asking if the block failed. They were asking why it looked like it never even started. This is where the story begins to feel uncomfortable. Because bad football is easy to explain. Misassignments happen. Feet slip, timing breaks. But intent is a different conversation. Intent turns mistakes into accusations. And once that word enters a room, it doesn't leave quietly. It sits there heavy, demanding answers no one is ready to give. Especially not a young quarterback already living under a microscope. Especially not an organization trying to sell stability, while chaos keeps leaking through the seams. Shedeur's journey into this moment didn't happen overnight. From the day he stepped into the spotlight, everything about him was loud. The name, the expectations, the comparisons. Every throw felt like a referendum. Every loss felt personal. And every misstep was amplified by people waiting to be proven right. That pressure doesn't disappear when the ball is snapped. It follows you into the huddle, into the pocket, into the film room. So when protection collapses, the narrative doesn't blame the collapse. It blames the man standing behind it. That's what made this play different. Because it didn't just end a drive. It fed a storyline that had already been circling. A storyline about whether Shedeur was being set up to fail. About whether he was being evaluated fairly. about whether the organization around him was invested in his success or quietly preparing their exit plan. No one said those words out loud at first. They didn't have to. The tape said enough to start the whispers, and whispers spread faster than facts. Blogs picked it up. Reaction channels clipped it. Anonymous accounts started posting side-by-side comparisons. One clip showed elite tackles fighting through contact on 4th down. Another showed Robinson drifting out away like a man late to a meeting. The captions were ruthless. That's not losing a rep. That's choosing not to win. That's business decisions. And buried in the comments were darker theories. Not proven, not confirmed, but repeated enough times to feel real. Inside the building, none of this was supposed to be public. Film is private currency in football. It's how players are corrected, not convicted. But once something leaks into the public eye, control disappears. Suddenly, ownership names are trending. Suddenly, decisions that were supposed to stay internal are being debated by people who have never stepped on an NFL field. And at the center of that storm sits Jimmy Haslam, an owner whose reputation for patience has always been complicated by moments of sudden action. Sources close to the situation say Haslam noticed the noise immediately. Not the memes, not the hot takes, the pattern. Because this wasn't the first time a Shedeur drive died in a way that felt avoidable. It was just the most visible, the most undeniable, the kind of clip that makes even neutral observers uncomfortable. And when discomfort turns into consensus, leadership has to respond, or at least appear to. Cam Robinson's name started floating in rooms it hadn't floated in before, not as a veteran presence, not as a stabilizer, but as a question mark. Coaches reviewed the tape again. Then again, they talked about leverage, about footwork, about assignments. But those explanations felt thin compared to what the screen showed, because technique errors usually come with effort. This looked like absence, and absence is harder to justify than failure. Meanwhile, Shedeur said the right things. He always does. He talked about execution, about accountability, about getting better. He didn't throw anyone under the bus. He didn't point at the line. He didn't feed the fire. But body language doesn't lie, and neither does silence. When a quarterback stops trusting the pocket, it changes everything. The reads get rushed. The feet get restless. The game speeds up in ways film can't fix. Fans picked up on that too. They noticed how quickly he moved off his spot, how often he had to create instead of operate. And they asked the question that scares organizations the most. How do you evaluate a quarterback if the environment around him is broken? That question doesn't have a clean answer, especially when the tape keeps offering moments that look less like chaos and more like consent. By the end of the week, the narrative had hardened, not proven, not official, but emotionally locked in. Robinson wasn't just blocking poorly in the public imagination. He was sabotaging, and Haslam wasn't just watching. He was preparing to act. That's what the rumors said. That's what the leaks implied. And once that idea took hold, the story stopped being about one play and started being about power, accountability, and whether betrayal can happen in plain sight without anyone stopping it. But what came next, even his enemies didn't expect. The moment the clip went viral, everything shifted. This wasn't just a bad rep anymore. It was a referendum. The blogs didn't wait for confirmation. They never do. Headlines exploded overnight, each one louder than the last. 4th and 2 or 4th and through. Did he even try? The play that changed everything. And once those words hit timelines, there was no pulling them back. The story had legs now, long ones. What made it worse was the timing. The team had already been under scrutiny. Whispers about internal tension, questions about direction, quiet frustration leaking out through body language and post-game quotes. The single play landed on top of all of that like gasoline on a spark. Suddenly, people weren't just rewatching the snap. They were rewatching the season. Every missed block, every hurried throw, every drive that stalled out when it mattered most. And with each rewind, the same question kept surfacing. How much of this is on the quarterback, and how much of it never was? Then came the so-called leaks. Screenshots with no clear source. Messages from someone close to the locker room. Anonymous posts claiming players had already been called into meetings. Were they real? Impossible to verify, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to feel plausible. One message claimed leadership was not happy at all and that the tape raised serious concerns. Another hinted that this was an isolated incident. That frustration with Robinson had been building behind closed doors for weeks. Again, nothing confirmed, but repetition gives rumors weight. Reaction channels went into overdrive. Former players slowed the tape down frame by frame, narrating every movement like it was a crime scene. "Look at his hands," one said. "Look at his feet." Another laughed, not because it was funny, but because disbelief sometimes sounds like humor. "If you're gonna miss," he said, "miss loud. This is quiet." That line stuck. Quiet failure. Silent sabotage. Words like that don't just describe plays. They accuse people. Meanwhile, fan reaction split into two camps. One side said this was overblown, that football is messy, that not every bad rep is a conspiracy. They pointed at angles that could justify the movement, schemes that might explain the confusion. The other side wasn't interested in nuance. They saw what they saw, and what they saw looked intentional. The comment sections turned into courtrooms, evidence presented, motives speculated, verdicts delivered by usernames with no profile pictures. And right in the middle of it all was Shedeur, doing exactly what quarterbacks are told to do when the room is on fire. Stay calm, say less, keep working. But the silence around him was louder than anything he could have said, because this time the noise wasn't about his throws. It wasn't about decision-making. It was about protection, or the lack of it. And once that conversation starts, it changes how every future mistake is interpreted. Then came the alleged meetings. According to multiple reports, again anonymous, again unconfirmed, ownership wanted answers, not from the media, from inside the building. Coaches were asked to explain what the tape showed, not in theory, not in coach speak, but plainly. Was this assignment failure, technique breakdown, or something more troubling? The kind of thing you don't write on whiteboards, because writing it makes it real. Cam Robinson's name stopped being mentioned casually. It started being spoken carefully. Veterans notice that shift. When the tone changes, you feel it before anyone says it. The way people look at you in the hallway, the way questions are phrased, the way your reps get evaluated with extra attention. Nothing official had happened yet. No statement, no discipline, but the air was different. And in professional sports, that's usually the warning shot. The scandal narrative kept expanding. Old clips resurfaced. Plays from earlier games where Robinson looked slow off the snap, disengaged, almost attached. Were those moments always there? Or were people just looking harder now? That's the danger of retrospective analysis. Once you believe a story, you start finding proof everywhere. And yet, some of those clips were hard to explain away. The effort didn't match the moment, especially not when the quarterback behind you was fighting for legitimacy every single week. Sarcasm crept into the commentary, because nothing screams teamwork like stepping aside on fourth down. Memes followed, some cruel, some darkly funny. But humor has a way of normalizing accusations. What starts as a joke becomes an accepted truth if repeated enough times. And Robinson became the punchline of a conversation no player ever wants to be the center of. At the same time, Shedeur's performance started getting reevaluated through a different lens. Analysts who had been critical softened their tone. They pointed out his pocket movement, his composure, his ability to keep drives alive despite constant pressure. He's doing what he's supposed to do, one said, but he's doing it without help. That framing mattered, because it shifted blame away from the quarterback and onto the structure around him. And when that happens, someone has to answer for it. That's when Jimmy Haslam's name began appearing in every breakdown, not as a passive owner, but as a looming presence. A man known for decisive moves when lines are crossed. Reports claimed he had personally reviewed the tape, that he wasn't interested in public spin, that he wanted accountability. Again, nothing confirmed, but believable enough to keep the story alive. And just when it felt like the narrative had peaked, just when people thought this was as far as it would go, another name started trending alongside Robinson's. Another clip, another moment, another question about who was really protecting whom inside that locker room. Because the deeper people dug, the more it started to feel like this wasn't about one play anymore. It was about a system. But just when we thought it was over, another name came up. By the time the second name surfaced, the story had crossed a point of no return. This was no longer a single-player controversy. It was no longer a bad rep under a microscope. It had become a referendum on culture, accountability, and who really pays the price when narratives are written in real time. Because once fans started asking who else knew, silence stopped being neutral. Silence became suspicious. Inside the building, the mood reportedly shifted from defensive to surgical. Not emotional, not loud, quiet, calculated. The kind of quiet that makes people uneasy because it means decisions are being weighed, not debated. When ownership starts asking questions, it's rarely about optics, it's about control. And control only matters when it's been threatened. Shedeur felt it too. You could see in the way he moved after the snap in the following games. Faster reads, quicker exits, less trust. Quarterbacks don't announce when they lose faith in protection. They show it. And that kind of adaptation doesn't come from coaching points alone. It comes from survival, from knowing that if something breaks down, you might be on your own. The backlash reached a strange place. Some fans began defending Robinson aggressively, not because they believed he played well, but because admitting sabotage felt too extreme. Why would a professional do that? They asked. What would he gain? Reasonable questions. But the other side had answers ready. Leverage, job security, narrative control. Whether those answers were right didn't matter anymore. They fit the story people had already accepted. Then came the speculation about consequences. Benching, fines, reduced snaps, quiet, trays discussed in back channels. No announcement ever confirmed any of it, but the absence of denial was its own kind of message. In the NFL, punishment doesn't always come with press releases. Sometimes it comes with fewer reps. Sometimes it comes with shorter leashes. Sometimes it comes with being watched a little more closely than everyone else. What complicated everything was the broader picture. Shedeur wasn't playing like a liability. In fact, the more pressure he faced, the more his composure stood out. Analysts pointed to his pocket movement, his patience, his refusal to panic. "He's not the problem," became a recurring refrain. And when a quarterback earns that kind of defense from people who once doubted him, it forces organizations to look inward. That's where the fallout truly began. Because once leadership starts asking, what are we really evaluating here? Everything changes. If a quarterback is being judged behind a failing structure, then every conclusion drawn from that evaluation is flawed. And flawed evaluations lead to bad decisions, the kind that cost franchises years. Cam Robinson's situation became symbolic. Fair or not, he represented something bigger than himself. Effort, trust, buy-in, the idea that everyone in the huddle is pulling in the same direction. When that belief cracks, even slightly, it poisons a room. Players start questioning motives. Fans start questioning loyalty. And young quarterbacks start questioning whether the system wants them to succeed or simply wants proof they can't. Behind the scenes, the talk wasn't about one fourth down play anymore. It was about patterns, about whether this environment allowed Shedeur to grow or quietly set him up as a temporary solution, about whether the organization was aligned from top to bottom or fractured in ways the public rarely sees. Those are dangerous conversations, not because they're dramatic, but because they force honesty. Some insiders hinted at a course correction. That Haslam wanted clarity, that he wanted to know who was all in and who wasn't. Again, nothing official, but enough to keep the tension alive, enough to make every snap feel heavier, enough to make every missed block feel intentional, even when it might not have been. And that's the cruel part of these situations. Once trust erodes, everything looks like betrayal. Effort gets questioned, mistakes get reinterpreted, and players become symbols instead of people. Cam Robinson stopped being just a tackle struggling with form. He became the face of a theory, a cautionary tale, a warning. As for Shedeur, The narrative flipped in his favor, but at a cost. Sympathy replaced skepticism, but sympathy doesn't protect quarterbacks. Linemen do, systems do, belief does. And until those things align, no amount of talent can fully shine. You can survive, you can flash, but you can't settle. By the end of the cycle, the internet had already decided what it believed. Ownership was reportedly watching more closely than ever. The locker room was quieter, and the tape kept rolling, indifferent to feelings, preserving moments forever. Because in this league, nothing disappears. It just waits to be replayed. And that's where the story leaves us. Not with a press conference, not with a clear verdict, but with a question that refuses to go away. Was this incompetence or something more calculated? Was this a system breaking down or exposing itself? Because one play was enough to shake the foundation. And when the dust settled, one thing was clear. The play ended, the drive died, but the doubt didn't. The silence lingered. And then someone stopped answering calls. So now it's on you. Because after everything we just walked through, the tape, the reactions, the silence, the unanswered questions, this story refuses to end neatly. No official statement cleared the air. No press conference erased the doubt. No single explanation closed the case. Instead, we're left with something far more unsettling. A moment frozen on film that still doesn't make sense no matter how many times you replay it. Was that 4th and 2 just bad football at the worst possible time? Or was it something deeper? Something that exposed cracks nobody wanted to talk about out loud? Think about it. In a league where every inch is fought for, where careers are decided by effort on a single snap, how does a moment like that happen? And if you're a young quarterback trying to prove you belong, how do you build trust when the people in front of you might not be fully bought in? This isn't just about Cam Robinson. It's not even just about Shedeur Sanders. It's about accountability, culture, and what really happens behind closed doors when the cameras aren't supposed to see everything. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this was incompetence or intentional? Did the tape show a mistake or a message? And if ownership really is stepping in, what should the consequences be? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Debate it, argue it, break it down frame by frame if you have to, because this conversation isn't going away, and neither is this footage. And if you made it this far, you already know what to do. Hit that like button to push this story further. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Turn on notifications, because if another tape surfaces, if another name gets pulled into this, you'll hear it here first. This story isn't over. The silence is loud, and the truth, it's still unfolding.